Hey guys, tonight we dive deep into a world where empires clash and the fate of entire civilizations hangs by a thread. You find yourself standing on the sun-baked shores of Ionia, those shimmering coastal cities scattered along what is now the western coast of Turkey. The salty sea breeze ruffles your hair as merchants haggle in bustling markets and fishermen haul in their catches, but beneath this everyday life lies a simmering tension that could ignite the world. You probably won't survive this journey unscathed, because the Greco-Persian Wars were anything but gentle, and their echoes still ripple through history today. But before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. I'm curious where you're tuning in from as we explore this ancient drama. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The seeds of the Greco-Persian Wars begin with the Ionian Revolt around 499 BCE. Imagine the Ionian Greeks, descendants of the original Greek settlers, living under the heavy hand of the Persian Empire, which, at its height, stretched from the Indus River in the east all the way to the Aegean Sea in the west. These cities had once tasted independence, self-governance, and a thriving culture of art and philosophy. Now, they chafed under the rule of distant Persian governors, or satraps, who collected taxes and imposed laws that felt alien. You walk along narrow streets in Miletus, the richest Ionian city, where merchants whisper fears of Persian oppression. The revolt sparks here, not with armies banging shields, but with quiet conspiracies, secret meetings, and the flicker of hope that freedom might be reclaimed. Aristagoras, the tyrant of Miletus, had egged on the rebellion after a failed expedition against Naxos. In a classic twist of history, a botched military gamble lights the fuse for a much larger war. Now, it's fascinating to note that the Persian Empire was, at this time, the largest the world had ever seen, made possible by innovations like the Royal Road, one of history's first superhighways, that allowed messages to fly from Susa to Sardis in just days. Think about that, a letter traveling hundreds of miles faster than you could walk in a week. Scientists still argue whether the Ionian Revolt was a genuine fight for freedom or a calculated power struggle by local elites trying to retain influence. Either way, the revolt spread rapidly along the coast. Athens and Eretria, Greek city-states across the sea, sent ships to support their Ionian cousins, a bold move that would invite Persian wrath. Picture the surprise in Persia's royal court when word arrives that distant Greek cities dared interfere in their empire's affairs. King Darius I, recently consolidating power and stabilizing his vast realm, now faced a challenge that threatened his prestige and control. It was personal. You can almost hear the sharp crack of his royal whip as he orders a punitive expedition to teach the Greeks a lesson they won't forget. The revolt ultimately failed, but its fire had been kindled, and it lit the path for a war that would reshape the ancient world. The Ionian cities were crushed, but their courage sent a clear message: Persian expansion would meet fierce resistance. Now, a quirky tidbit for your sleepless minds: some historians speculate that the Ionian Revolt was partially inspired by religious tensions. The Persians practiced Zoroastrianism, a dualistic faith emphasizing light versus darkness, while the Greeks worshipped a pantheon of gods who sometimes seemed indifferent or even hostile to outsiders. These spiritual differences, subtle as they may be, may have deepened cultural divides and added fuel to political fires. As you imagine the bustling port cities, the salty breeze, and the tension thick enough to cut with a sword, remember that this moment is more than just history. It's a story of human will, pride, and the inevitable clash when empires reach too far. You're back on the windswept plains of Anatolia, feeling the ground tremble beneath the marching boots of the vast Persian army. Darius I is no longer content with distant whispers of rebellion. He is on the move, determined to crush Greek defiance before it inspires others. Imagine the heavy clang of armor and the rhythmic stomp of tens of thousands of soldiers moving westward, the air thick with dust and anticipation. The Persian retaliation following the Ionian Revolt was swift and brutal. Darius dispatched a massive force led by his general Datis, composed of infantry, cavalry, and a powerful naval fleet, to punish Athens and Eretria for their meddling. The scale of this mobilization was staggering. You can almost smell the leather of the cavalry saddles, the brine of the sea as triremes set sail, and the acrid smoke of villages being razed to the ground. The Persian army was a cosmopolitan force, drawn from across the empire's vast expanse: Egyptian archers, Median horsemen, and even Indian mercenaries, each with their own customs and weaponry. You might find it surprising that the Persian army's effectiveness came not from uniformity, but from this diverse coalition united under one banner. There's a bit of a quirky side note here. Some ancient sources describe the Persian soldiers as wearing colorful robes and even gold jewelry into battle, prioritizing splendor alongside strength. Talk about fighting in style. You tread carefully through historical accounts and modern debate, as scientists still argue whether the Persian forces were primarily a standing professional army or more of a feudal levy raised for campaigns. Either way, the Persian advance was relentless. Their strategy involved both land assaults and naval blockades, aiming to isolate Greek city-states from external support. You reached the walls of Eretria, a fortified city on the island of Euboea, feeling the tension as siege engines roar and arrows darken the sky. Despite heroic defense efforts, Eretria falls after a brief siege, its destruction sending a chilling message to other Greek cities: resistance would come at a heavy price. Next, the Persian fleet turns toward Marathon, a coastal plain not far from Athens. The Greek city-state braces for invasion, scrambling its citizens into hoplite formations, heavy infantry soldiers armed with long spears and massive shields. The Athenians have never faced such a colossal force before, and the odds are grim. Yet, there's something in the air, a silent promise of courage and grit. A mainstream scientific fact to keep your mind buzzing as you drift: historians estimate the Persian fleet at Marathon numbered around 600 triremes, three-oared warships that were marvels of ancient engineering. Each trireme could reach speeds up to 8 knots and relied on coordinated rowers for propulsion. Coordinated rowing, by the way, is a real feat of human teamwork that demands hours of practice, much like synchronized swimming, only with less glitter and more splinters. On a stranger note, some scholars suggest that Persian armies might have used early forms of psychological warfare, like terrifying noise from horns and drums, and the display of exotic animals like camels to unsettle Greek horses unaccustomed to such creatures. Imagine the chaos as horses panic and soldiers try to regain control amidst the cacophony. As you look ahead to the impending battle, the atmosphere is electric. The fate of Greece, and perhaps the entire Western world, hangs in the balance. The first direct clash between the mighty Persian Empire and the fiercely independent Greek city-states is about to unfold. Remember, these moments aren't just dates and names, they're stories of human resolve, of empires on the brink, and of individuals stepping into legend. The dust may settle soon, but the echoes will last millennia. You stand on the windswept plains of Marathon, the salty sea breeze brushing past your face, carrying with it the scent of sweat, dust, and raw anticipation. Before you stretches a vast field, where two armies face each other in a silence so thick it feels like the world itself is holding its breath. On one side, tens of thousands of Persian soldiers, confident and diverse, their banners fluttering in the wind. On the other, a smaller but fiercely determined Greek force, primarily Athenian hoplites, gripping their long spears and large round shields, waiting for the moment to strike. This is 490 BCE, and the Battle of Marathon is about to erupt in a way that no one quite expects. You can almost hear the pounding footsteps, the shouted commands in strange languages, and the occasional clash of metal as soldiers tighten their armor. The Greeks, numbering around 10,000 men, know they're outnumbered, but their spirits are far from broken. Their secret weapon isn't just their armor or weapons, it's their discipline, their unity, and their deep belief that they're defending not just land, but their very way of life. As you watch, the Greek general Miltiades makes a bold move. Instead of waiting for the Persians to attack, he orders a rapid advance, a charge across the plain. The ground shakes beneath the thunderous march of heavily armored hoplites, who sprint toward the enemy at a pace unheard of for soldiers weighed down with bronze helmets and shields. This tactic takes the Persians by surprise, as Greek soldiers close the gap before the Persian archers can unleash a deadly rain of arrows. You feel the tension tighten like a bowstring as the two forces collide in a chaotic melee, spears thrusting and shields clashing. The thick dust clouds rise, momentarily obscuring the brutal ballet of hand-to-hand combat. Despite their numbers, the Persians struggle to maintain formation against the heavy Greek hoplites, who punch through their lines with devastating force. A mainstream scientific fact here is that the hoplites' panoply, their bronze helmet, breastplate, greaves, and large shield, was designed to work as a cohesive unit. The famous Greek phalanx formation relied on soldiers locking their shields to create an almost impenetrable wall. This collective defense was revolutionary for its time, emphasizing group cohesion over individual prowess. Now for a quirky tidbit, some ancient sources claim that during the battle, the Athenians used a kind of war cry so loud and shrill that it unnerved the Persian horses, causing them to panic. Whether this is a bit of ancient hype or truth, it certainly adds color to the chaos of battle. Scientists still argue whether the Persian army's tactics were genuinely inferior or simply unsuited to the terrain and the Greek style of fighting. What is clear, though, is that the Battle of Marathon was a turning point, a rare defeat for the mighty Persian forces that sent shockwaves through the empire. After hours of fierce fighting, the Greeks emerged victorious, routing the Persians and forcing them back to their ships. The victory wasn't just a military success, it was a seismic morale boost for all of Greece, showing that the seemingly unstoppable Persian Empire could be beaten. And there's a fun little myth tied to this victory that you might have heard, the story of Phidippides, the runner who supposedly dashed all the way to Athens, roughly 26 miles, to deliver news of the win before collapsing and dying. While historians debate the accuracy of this tale, it's given birth to the modern marathon race, a legacy of endurance and triumph. So, as you lie back, imagining the sun setting over Marathon's dusty fields and the victorious cheers of the Greeks mingling with the salty sea breeze, know that this battle set the stage for centuries of conflict and culture that still inspire us today. You're now drifting along the rocky Aegean coastline, the waves gently lapping against ancient shores as the Greek city-states reel from their stunning victory at Marathon. But the story is far from over. In the aftermath, the Persian Empire, led by King Darius, is seething, not just at the loss, but at the audacity of these small city-states who dared to defy the world's mightiest empire. You sense the brewing storm, the whispers of retribution carried on the sea breeze. Darius begins preparing a far larger and more formidable invasion force. This time, he entrusts the campaign to his son, Xerxes I, a towering figure obsessed with avenging Persian honor and expanding his dominion over all of Greece. The scale of this preparation is breathtaking. Hundreds of thousands of troops gather, along with a colossal fleet of warships ready to cross the Hellespont. Imagine standing on the shores of the Hellespont, watching thousands of Persian soldiers and sailors toil to build two massive pontoon bridges spanning the turbulent strait. The sight is a marvel of ancient engineering, wooden beams floating on anchored boats, tied together with ropes thick enough to hold armies. It's so ambitious, so audacious, that you can't help but marvel at the sheer scale of human ingenuity and manpower. Yet, nature isn't always cooperative. A fierce storm rips through the strait, destroying one of the bridges and forcing Xerxes to humbly order its reconstruction. There's a legendary tale of Xerxes punishing the sea by whipping its waves and chaining it to a rock, an early example of hubris meeting humor in history. Whether or not he really did that, it reflects the clash between man's ambition and nature's untamable forces. The Persian invasion force is a melting pot of peoples, from Egyptians and Babylonians to Scythians and Indians, all united under Xerxes's banner. You might find it fascinating that some of these soldiers brought war elephants and chariots, unfamiliar to the Greeks, whose tactics had evolved without facing such beasts. Scientists still argue whether the Persian army was truly as vast as ancient historians claimed. Herodotus famously estimated 1 million soldiers, though modern scholars suggest a more modest figure closer to 200,000 to 300,000. Regardless, it remains one of the largest military mobilizations in ancient history. Meanwhile, the Greek city-states, once fractured by rivalry, face the existential threat of this unprecedented invasion. Athens and Sparta, longtime rivals, set aside their differences and form a fragile alliance, rallying other city-states to create a united front. It's a political dance as tense as any battlefield. You can almost hear the Spartan warriors' boots pounding in training, their mothers telling them, "Come back with your shield," or on it, a chilling mantra reflecting Spartan society's brutal discipline and valor. The Athenians, meanwhile, strengthened their navy, knowing the battle for Greece will be fought on both land and sea. There's a quirky tidbit worth your bedtime amusement. Some Persian soldiers reportedly wore mirrored armor, dazzling the sun to blind enemies, a tactic that may have had mixed success against the gritty hoplites used to Mediterranean glare. As you close your eyes, picture the immense tension across the narrow pass of Thermopylae, the rocky cliffs looming overhead, where fate will soon test the courage and will of these unlikely defenders. The stage is set for a showdown that will echo through history, a tale of valor, sacrifice, and strategic brilliance. So as you sink deeper into your pillow, imagine the hum of armies preparing, the distant clang of armor, and the quiet breath before the storm. You find yourself at the narrow mountain pass of Thermopylae, where the scent of pine mingles with the crisp mountain air. This is the perfect place to hold off a massive army, and you feel the weight of the moment as a few thousand Greek warriors prepare to face the seemingly endless Persian tide. The pass is a natural choke point, just a few dozen meters wide, flanked by steep cliffs and the churning sea, making it nearly impossible for the huge Persian army to deploy effectively. It's like nature itself is siding with the defenders. Leading the Greek forces is King Leonidas of Sparta, a figure carved out of legend, broad-shouldered, with a stern gaze that seems to pierce through the mist. Around 300 Spartans stand with him, alongside a few thousand allies from other city-states, ready to fight not just for land, but for the very soul of Greece. You sense the air thick with silent determination and the hum of countless whispered prayers. The Persian army is vast and diverse, stretching as far as the eye can see. Imagine the gleaming armor of their cavalry, the rattle of chariots, and the rhythmic pounding of countless feet as they push forward. But here, in this confined space, their numbers become less of an advantage. The Greeks know the terrain and plan to use it to their fullest. As you watch the first wave of Persians crash against the Greek phalanx, you feel the ground tremble beneath the impact. The Spartans' tightly packed shields form a wall, their long spears thrusting like the teeth of a beast. Each soldier's breath is steady, controlled, a testament to years of relentless training and discipline. A mainstream scientific fact to drift off with, the Spartan diet and lifestyle contributed to their warrior ethos. Researchers studying ancient bones found that Spartan children were subjected to rigorous physical conditioning and even periodic fasting to strengthen their resilience and endurance, essentially making them some of the earliest examples of extreme fitness regimes. Now, for something a bit more eccentric, some scholars suggest that the Spartans used a secret code language in battle, a series of whistle signals and calls designed to coordinate maneuvers without alerting the enemy. Whether this is entirely true or a bit of romanticized storytelling is still up for debate, but it adds a layer of mystery to the Spartan war machine. Scientists still argue about the exact number of Persian troops at Thermopylae and how long the Greeks could realistically hold the pass. Some say it was a hopeless delaying action, others believe it was a calculated sacrifice to buy time for the rest of Greece to mobilize. You imagine the tense days and nights, the sun rising and setting over bloodied rocks, the Spartans enduring wave after wave of assaults, refusing to yield. Their shields are cracked, their armor battered, but their resolve is unbroken. It's not just a battle, it's a testament to human endurance and the will to resist overwhelming odds. Behind the scenes, a local shepherd named Ephialtes betrays the Greeks by revealing a hidden mountain path to the Persians, enabling them to flank the defenders. The name Ephialtes becomes synonymous with treachery, a reminder that even the strongest defenses can be undone from within. As the sun sinks below the horizon on the final day, you hear the clash of steel and the cries of valor and anguish. Leonidas and his Spartans fight to the last breath, knowing that their sacrifice will echo for millennia as a symbol of courage. So, as you drift toward sleep, let the image of those fearless warriors standing firm against impossible odds fill your dreams, reminding you that sometimes, the greatest victories come from the deepest acts of defiance. You find yourself drifting through the narrow mountain paths beyond Thermopylae, where the sun casts long shadows across rugged cliffs and the whispering wind carries stories of sacrifice and strategy. The Spartans' valiant stand has ended, but their spirit lingers, fueling the resolve of all Greece. You feel the weight of that sacrifice as the Persian forces now surge forward, their momentum unstoppable, but the Greeks are not yet defeated. As Xerxes' massive army sweeps into central Greece, you sense the urgency pulsing through the city-states. Athens, in particular, faces a dire choice: abandon their city to the invading Persians or stand and fight. The decision hangs heavy in the air, like the scent of impending rain. You picture the frantic meetings in the Athenian assembly, the debates raging as citizens weigh their options. The philosophers and generals argue fiercely, but the voice of Themistocles, a clever and ambitious leader, rises above the rest. He urges evacuation, a tactical retreat to save lives and fight another day. His plan involves using Athens' growing naval power to challenge the Persians at sea, a gamble that could change the course of history. Meanwhile, thousands of Athenians pack their belongings onto ships, their faces a mix of fear and determination. The city's temples and homes fall silent, abandoned to the enemy. The smoke from fires and the distant clang of Persian boots echo across the deserted streets. You can almost feel the salty spray of the sea as the Athenian fleet sails toward the narrow Strait of Salamis, where the rocky shores promise a strategic advantage. The Persian navy, vast and confident, pursues them, unaware that the confined waters will soon turn into a deadly trap. A mainstream scientific fact floats in here: ancient Greek triremes, the primary warships of the time, were marvels of engineering. With 3 tiers of oars powered by hundreds of rowers, these ships could reach speeds of up to 7 knots and perform sharp turns, crucial in the tight waters of the Aegean. Here's a quirky tidbit to lull you further. Some Greek sailors believed that dolphins guided their ships, a superstition born from occasional sightings of pods escorting fleets. While dolphins didn't take sides, their presence certainly boosted morale and inspired tales of divine favor. Scientists still argue about the exact tactics used at the Battle of Salamis, with some suggesting that Greek commanders exploited intricate knowledge of the coastline, while others believe sheer Persian overconfidence sealed their fate. As you float along the waves, the battle erupts in a cacophony of clashing bronze, shouted commands, and the screams of men. The narrow straits forced the massive Persian fleet into cramped formations, vulnerable to the agile Greek triremes. You imagine the adrenaline-charged moments as Greek ships rammed their bronze prows into enemy vessels, splintering wood and sending sailors tumbling into the water. The Persians, unused to fighting in such restricted waters, struggle to coordinate, their larger numbers becoming a liability. Amid the chaos, fires break out on several Persian ships, sending thick black smoke billowing into the sky. In the end, the Greeks claim a decisive victory, sinking or capturing a significant portion of the Persian fleet and forcing Xerxes to retreat. The Battle of Salamis proves that clever strategy and intimate knowledge of terrain can topple even the most overwhelming odds. As you close your eyes, let the image of flickering fires reflecting on dark waters and the triumphant cheers of the Greek sailors lull you deeper, reminding you that sometimes, wisdom and unity triumph over brute strength. You wake, or rather drift, to the aftermath of the naval battle at Salamis, the sea now quiet except for the gentle lap of waves against battered ships. Xerxes, the great Persian king, retreats with a bruised ego and a fraction of his fleet. The Greek victory echoes like a thunderclap across the ancient world, but the war is far from over. You sense the tension in the air, a fragile pause as both sides regroup. Athens, still recovering from its evacuation, now faces the daunting task of rebuilding, physically and spiritually. You picture the dusty streets slowly filling with returning citizens, the ruins of temples and homes a stark reminder of the cost of war. But amidst the rubble, there's a fierce pride, a determination to protect freedom and culture against the tide of conquest. You can almost hear the voice of Pericles, the charismatic Athenian leader who steps forward to rally his people. He speaks of resilience, of Athens rising from ashes to lead the Greek world. His vision includes strengthening the city's walls, investing in the navy, and fostering arts and philosophy that will shape Western civilization for millennia. Meanwhile, the Persian forces retreat eastward, licking their wounds but far from defeated. Xerxes returns to Persia, leaving behind a smaller force under the command of Mardonius to continue the fight on Greek soil. This protracted struggle will drag on for years, testing alliances and strategies. A mainstream scientific fact drifts in. Studies of ancient weapon metallurgy reveal that Greek bronze weapons were often crafted using advanced alloying techniques that balanced hardness with flexibility, giving them a deadly edge in combat. This technological advantage, paired with superior training, played a crucial role in Greek battlefield success. For a quirky bedtime detail, some historians believe that during the war, Greek soldiers would sometimes use medicinal plants like opium poppies to dull pain and calm nerves, a kind of ancient battlefield anesthesia. Imagine a hoplite quietly chewing poppy seeds before a charge, trying to keep calm. Scientists still argue about how much the cultural and political shifts post-war were a direct result of military events or broader social evolution. Did victory forge Greek democracy's golden age, or was it already in motion? The debate continues. You picture a map stretching across the Aegean, dotted with city-states navigating complex alliances and rivalries. Athens and Sparta, once uneasy partners, now face renewed tension as their visions for Greece diverge. Athens leans toward maritime dominance and democracy, Sparta champions land power and oligarchy. The war spills into new battles, Plataea and Mycale, where Greek forces finally push Persian armies from their soil. You can almost hear the cheers of liberated townsfolk, the clash of arms signaling a turning point in history. As you drift deeper, let the image of Greece's resilient spirit, its cities rising, and the sun setting on an era of invasion soothe your mind. The story of the Greco-Persian Wars is a timeless reminder of courage, unity, and the enduring quest for freedom. You find yourself on a gentle hillside overlooking a sun-drenched Greek battlefield, the scent of wild thyme and dust swirling in the warm breeze. The war, though winding down, has reshaped more than just territory. It's rewritten the rules of power and identity across the Greek world. As you settle into this scene, you realize that the aftermath of the Greco-Persian Wars is not just about battles but about the birth of something new, something vast, the Delian League. The Delian League forms as a coalition of Greek city-states led by Athens, united with the goal of keeping Persia at bay and protecting their shared freedoms. You can almost hear the passionate debates in crowded assemblies, the clanging of bronze as hoplites train under the bright sun, and the rhythmic splash of oars powering warships across the shimmering sea. Athens rapidly expands its navy, turning it into the most formidable fleet in the ancient world. Ships line the harbors like metallic leviathans, their polished bronze prows glinting fiercely in the sunlight. The city thrives on the tribute paid by League members, but tensions simmer beneath the surface, as some city-states chafe under Athenian control, feeling more like subjects than allies. You imagine the vibrant agora, the bustling marketplace and political center, where ideas ferment as fast as merchants shout their wares. It's here that democracy blossoms in its early form, but you notice a shadow creeping in, the seeds of future conflict and rivalry, especially with Sparta, who watches Athens' growing power with suspicion. A mainstream scientific fact floats your way. Historians using ice core samples and dendrochronology, tree ring dating, have pieced together climate conditions of the era, suggesting that periods of drought and famine may have pressured these city-states politically and militarily, pushing them towards more aggressive alliances. For a quirky detail to ease you further, some Greek poets of the time wrote epics celebrating naval battles, but one odd recurring motif was the mysterious appearance of sea monsters or glowing jellyfish in their stories, possibly inspired by bioluminescent creatures glowing off the coast. Maybe those sailors just liked a bit of drama. Scientists still argue about how voluntary the Delian League really was. Was it a mutual defense pact or an Athenian empire in disguise? The debate over power, influence, and freedom feels as alive now as it was then. You feel the rhythm of oars cutting through the Aegean, hear the raucous cheers of sailors and citizens alike, and see the gleaming temples being built atop Athens' Acropolis, crowning the city with marble and ambition. This era will lay the groundwork for the classical Golden Age, but the war's shadow lingers, reminding all that peace is a fragile thing. As your eyes grow heavy, let the vision of a glittering fleet rocking gently on calm seas, of cities both proud and restless, carry you toward rest. Remember, history is as much about what comes after the battles as the battles themselves. You drift into the cool, olive-scented air of a bustling Athenian harbor, the cries of seagulls mingling with the rhythmic creak of wooden ships gently rocking in the breeze. The Delian League is no longer just a defensive alliance, it has morphed into a powerful Athenian empire, and with it, the tension between city-states rises like the tide. You can feel the unease rippling through the smaller league members, many of whom are tired of paying tribute to Athens while their own independence fades. Some whisper quietly about rebellion, while others resign themselves to their new roles. It's a delicate balancing act, and Athens rules with a mix of diplomatic charm and subtle coercion. Meanwhile, Sparta and its allies, still nursing their wounds from the Persian invasions, watch Athens with wary eyes. Their land-based military might contrasts sharply with Athens' naval dominance. You can almost hear the gruff Spartan commanders debating strategy in shadowy halls, while their warriors train relentlessly in the sun-drenched agoras. This simmering rivalry will eventually explode into the Peloponnesian War, a brutal conflict that will reshape the Greek world. But for now, you sense the uneasy peace, a calm before the storm. A mainstream scientific fact drifts in. Archaeological digs have uncovered sophisticated ancient shipbuilding techniques in Athens, including the use of fast-drying pine that allowed rapid construction of triremes, helping Athens maintain its naval supremacy. Here's a quirky bedtime detail. Some Athenian sailors believed carrying small statues of Poseidon, god of the sea, could protect them from storms, though ironically, some of these statues were found broken in shipwrecks, prompting quiet questions about Poseidon's generosity. Scientists still argue whether Athens' empire was more of a benevolent protector or an oppressive ruler, the empire of freedom, or an imperial overlord in disguise. The debate colors much of what we know about this era. You imagine a nighttime scene where torchlit ships set sail under star-studded skies, their sails billowing softly, carrying soldiers and merchants alike into a world poised on the edge of transformation. The hum of the sea, the creak of rigging, the distant murmur of conversations all lull you toward peaceful sleep. You're drawn into the quiet, dusty streets of Athens at dawn, where artisans are already at work and the warm light spills over marble statues. The city hums with the energy of innovation and culture, fueled by the newfound wealth and confidence gained after the Greco-Persian Wars. This is the Golden Age, a time of philosophers, playwrights, and architects. As you walk beside the Parthenon's towering columns, you sense the pride in every chiseled detail. This temple, dedicated to Athena, embodies Athens' spirit, fierce, brilliant, and unyielding. You can almost hear the voices of Pericles, Socrates, and Sophocles weaving through the agora, their ideas rippling through history like a stone thrown into a still pond. Yet, beneath the grandeur, there is tension. Sparta, still distrustful, tightens its grip on the Peloponnesian League, a rival coalition preparing for the conflicts to come. You feel the unease in whispered council meetings and guarded glances across battle lines. Democracy and oligarchy face off, ideals clashing with ambition. A mainstream scientific fact surfaces. Studies of ancient Athenian pottery reveal advances in pigment technology, showing not only artistic skill but also early chemical experimentation. This reflects a society eager to explore and understand the world around them, blending art with science. For a quirky twist, some Athenians believed that owls, symbols of Athena, could predict the outcome of battles. Owls hooted mysteriously before key decisions, leading to superstitions about the wisdom of these nocturnal birds. Scientists still argue whether Athens' democracy was truly inclusive or limited to a privileged few, sparking ongoing debates about power, citizenship, and equality that resonate even today. You hear the distant laughter of children playing near the Acropolis, the clang of sculptors' tools, the murmur of debates, all weaving into the city's vibrant tapestry. Let the rhythm of this ancient metropolis lull you into a deep, reflective sleep, where ideas and dreams mingle under the stars. You find yourself wandering through the cool, olive groves outside Athens, the scent of earth and ripening fruit filling the air. The war is behind, but its echoes resonate in every corner of Greek life. The Delian League's growing power has sparked both admiration and resentment. You feel the pulse of history speeding up, as alliances shift and old friendships strain under the weight of ambition. Athens pushes forward with bold reforms, investing heavily in arts, architecture, and naval power. The city is a beacon of light and learning, a place where ideas flourish and debate fills the air like the buzz of cicadas on a hot summer evening. You picture the poets, playwrights, and philosophers who shape Western thought, each a spark in the grand mosaic of history. But tension with Sparta tightens like a noose. You sense the impending conflict, the build-up to the Peloponnesian War. It's a war not just of armies but of ideologies, democracy clashing with oligarchy, freedom battling control. You hear the whispered plotting in shadowy chambers, the clinking of armor, the distant sounds of training camps filling the night. A mainstream scientific fact emerges. Historians using carbon dating techniques have refined timelines of the Peloponnesian War, confirming the long, drawn-out nature of the conflict and its devastating impact on Greek society and population. Here's a quirky detail. Some Spartan warriors were known to chew on a mix of herbs and honey before battle, believed to sharpen focus and dull pain, a kind of ancient performance enhancer that may have given them an edge. Scientists still argue about the true causes of the Peloponnesian War. Were economic rivalries or ideological differences more decisive? The answer remains as elusive as the distant stars above the Aegean. You watch as the sun sets behind distant hills, casting long shadows over fields and fortresses. The calm before the storm is palpable, and you feel the slow march of history drawing you closer to one of antiquity's most famous and brutal conflicts. You find yourself slipping through the narrow streets of Sparta just before dawn, the cold morning air crisp against your skin. The city is stark and disciplined, a sharp contrast to the vibrant chaos of Athens you just left behind. You sense the rigid order that shapes Spartan life, the endless training, the strict codes, the unyielding loyalty to the state. The Spartans have rebuilt their strength, fueled by determination to check Athens' growing dominance. You can almost hear the clatter of spears during rigorous drills, the murmur of soldiers preparing mentally for the looming conflict. The Peloponnesian War is coming, and Sparta intends to win. Despite their focus on military power, Spartan society holds curious customs. Boys begin training as early as 7 years old in the Agoge system, a harsh regimen designed to forge warriors. You imagine the biting cold nights spent sleeping outdoors, the grueling physical tests, and the constant push to overcome pain and fear. A mainstream scientific fact arrives. Recent skeletal analyses of Spartan remains suggest their intense physical lifestyle led to distinct bone development, evidence of the extraordinary demands placed on their bodies from youth to adulthood. For a quirky bedtime detail, Spartan soldiers famously sometimes fought naked, believing it demonstrated courage and intimidated enemies. You chuckle imagining the confusion that tactic might cause on the battlefield, especially in the chill of early morning. Scientists still argue whether the Spartan emphasis on military training sacrificed cultural and artistic development, or if their austere lifestyle was simply a different but equally rich form of social structure. You feel the weight of Sparta's silent discipline settling around you like a cloak as the sun rises slowly, casting long shadows over the rugged hills. The calm before the storm deepens, and your breath slows, matching the steady pulse of a city preparing for war. You slip quietly into the shadowy corridors of Athenian power, where debates rage and strategies unfold beneath frescoed ceilings and marble pillars. The Peloponnesian War has erupted, pitting Athens against Sparta in a brutal test of wills, resources, and ideologies. The war's early years are marked by sieges, naval battles, and shifting alliances that pull the Greek world apart. You can almost hear the crackle of fires in the city as Athens braces for Spartan invasions, the pounding of oars against the sea during daring naval raids, and the murmurs of anxious citizens sheltering behind their formidable walls. The plague, a dark specter, stalks the city, turning vibrant streets into scenes of quiet despair. A mainstream scientific fact floats through your mind. Modern analysis of ancient burial sites reveals the devastating toll of the plague, which may have been typhus or typhoid fever, decimating nearly a third of Athens' population and changing the course of the war. For a quirky detail, some Athenians believed that red-hot iron dropped into wells could purify water and prevent illness, an early if ineffective attempt at hygiene that speaks to human ingenuity in crisis. Scientists still argue whether the plague's impact was a decisive factor in Athens' eventual defeat or simply one of many challenges in a complex conflict. You picture the war council chambers, where leaders argue over strategy, weighed down by the fear and hope of their people. The clash between Athens' democracy and Sparta's oligarchy plays out with fierce intensity, setting the stage for the eventual downfall of one and the transformation of the other. The night deepens, and you feel the heavy silence of a city under siege settle around you. Let the distant echoes of battle and the quiet resilience of its people guide you gently toward sleep. You step out into the smoky air of a battlefield outside the walls of Syracuse, the sun baking the cracked earth beneath your feet. The Sicilian expedition, Athens' bold and ultimately disastrous attempt to expand its influence, unfolds around you in vivid detail. Ships crowd the harbor, and the clang of swords echoes through the tense atmosphere. You sense the confidence of Athenian commanders, eager to bring another victory home, but also the grim determination of the Syracusans defending their city with every ounce of strength. The war here is brutal and unforgiving, a stark reminder of the high stakes in this prolonged conflict. A mainstream scientific fact weaves in. Sediment analysis from the area shows evidence of intense fires and destruction during the siege, revealing how warfare scarred not just people but the environment as well. For a quirky bedtime tidbit, some Athenian soldiers reportedly carried lucky charms made from the bones of dolphins, believed to grant protection at sea, a nod to the ever-present fear of drowning amid naval battles. Scientists still argue whether Athens' decision to launch the Sicilian expedition was driven by hubris or strategic necessity, with debates about how it might have been avoided still alive today. You imagine the dust settling after a fierce battle, the groans of the wounded mixing with the distant cries of birds returning to their nests. The war stretches on, weariness setting in, and you feel the slow unraveling of Athens' imperial dreams as the Sicilian catastrophe reshapes the balance of power. The fading light softens the harsh lines of the battlefield, inviting you to close your eyes and drift deeper into rest, carried by the quiet winds of history. You walk along the rugged coastline of the Aegean Sea, the salt-tinged breeze tousling your hair as the waves lap rhythmically against ancient stone harbors. The long shadows of the Peloponnesian War have stretched across the Greek world, and now both Athens and Sparta wear the scars of a drawn-out, exhausting conflict. The fragile peace negotiated feels more like a brief pause than a true end. The war's aftermath is a mosaic of shattered alliances, economic ruin, and a shaken population desperate for stability. You can almost see the weary farmers returning to cracked fields, the empty marketplaces struggling to fill their stalls, and the solemn councils debating how to rebuild what was lost. The dream of Greek unity feels distant, yet the resilience of these city-states glimmers like embers ready to reignite. A mainstream scientific fact surfaces. Archaeologists studying war-torn sites have found layers of ash and broken pottery, marking the cycles of destruction and recovery, shedding light on how ancient societies coped with prolonged warfare. For a quirky historical nugget, some citizens turn to ritual purification ceremonies involving strange dances and offerings to appease the gods, hoping to cleanse the city's misfortunes, because nothing says, "calm down, gods," like a midnight dance party. Scientists still argue about the long-term effects of the Peloponnesian War on the development of Western civilization. Was it a tragic setback or a harsh crucible forging democracy and philosophy? As the sun dips below the horizon, you feel the steady rhythm of waves and time, a soothing reminder that history is not just about battles and leaders, but about people who endure, rebuild, and dream anew. Let the peaceful cadence of the sea and the quiet strength of those ancient lands cradle you now, as your mind drifts gently toward rest. You walk quietly through the hills of northern Greece, where the wind whispers through pine-covered slopes and the future sharpens like the tip of a spear. The city-states of Athens, Sparta, and Thebes are still recovering from exhaustion, their strength frayed by years of war and rivalry. But farther north, something stirs, something different. Macedon. Not a city-state, but a kingdom. And its king, Philip II, is not just some wild northerner with a crown, he's a man with a plan. You catch a glimpse of him in the shadows of his court, studying the fractured Greek world like a lion eyes a wounded herd. He's been watching, waiting, preparing. A man shaped by both hostage years in Thebes and brutal battlefield experience, Philip combines Greek tactics with Macedonian muscle. You see him reform the army, swapping loose hoplite formations for a disciplined phalanx, where rows of soldiers carry spears longer than your average canoe. And here comes your mainstream science fact. Metallurgy studies of Macedonian weapons show a shift toward stronger, more flexible iron during Philip's reign, making their sarissas, those massive spears, harder to break and easier to drive through armor. A big deal when your whole battle plan is basically, stab them before they can stab you. But here's your quirky tidbit to chew on: Philip had one eye. Some accounts say it was lost to an arrow. Others claim it was some kind of divine punishment. Either way, you picture him leading armies with a literal blind spot, and still outmaneuvering just about everyone else. That's both impressive and, frankly, a little terrifying. Scientists still argue whether Macedon was truly Greek. Was it a cousin with a rough accent? A foreign power with a Hellenic makeover? Or just a clever opportunist playing dress-up? Whatever it was, you can feel the tremor beneath your feet now, as Philip tightens his grip and looks south. At first, the city-states barely take him seriously. He's got a northern drawl, a different haircut, and no big philosophers quoting him, yet. But then he wins a few battles. Then a few more. You hear his name whispered in the halls of Athens, muttered in the courtyards of Sparta. His diplomacy is just as sharp as his sword, marrying his way into alliances, sowing discord between enemies, bribing, flattering, conquering. And when the Greek world finally notices, it's already halfway under his control. You stand at the edge of something massive, something inevitable. Macedon is no longer a fringe kingdom, it's a force. And behind it, Philip, cunning, charismatic, and very, very patient. Now imagine this: you're watching him test out the new phalanx formation in a training field. The soldiers move like gears in a machine. They don't charge, they advance. Methodical. Relentless. Spears forward, shields up, a wall of death with a pulse. The air smells of sweat, dust, and oil used to polish armor. It's a new age of war. And still, in the quiet corners of Greek cities, some people scoff. Philip? From up north? Please. But you know better. You've seen the maps. The ambitions. The iron discipline of his troops. He's not just marching south, he's rewriting everything. The old city-states still believe they can hold their ground. They forget what they've become: tired, scattered, slow to unite. You hear the grumbles in agora debates, the calls for resistance. But resistance without unity? That's just noise. Philip hears it too, and smiles. And somewhere behind him, watching carefully, is a boy. Sharp-eyed, with a restless mind and a lion's spirit. Alexander. But for now, Philip is the storm. The wind shifts. Macedon is rising. And there's no going back. You're on the training grounds again, but this time, things feel different. Sharper. More. Engineered. The sun climbs slowly over the peaks of northern Greece as the Macedonian soldiers gather in silence, their movements disciplined, their eyes forward. You're watching the evolution of war in real time. The age of the hoplite is fading, and in its place rises something colder, more precise: the Macedonian phalanx. In the old days, you remember, hoplites fought in tight-knit units, city by city, shield to shield. It was heroic, yes, but also chaotic. One guy slips, the line buckles. But now, you're looking at a system designed like clockwork. 16 rows deep. Each soldier holding a sarissa, an enormous spear that stretches over 20 feet long. That's about the size of 3 bicycles stacked end to end. Seriously, it's like fighting with a telephone pole. As the formation marches, you hear the shink-shink rhythm of metal sandals and the rustle of leather armor. Spears tilt. Shields brace. The whole formation moves like a single creature. And you, standing off to the side, can feel the ground tremble just a little. Not from impact. From inevitability. Here comes your mainstream science fact. Studies in biomechanics show that coordinated group movement like this, think phalanx formations, or even flocks of birds, reduces the physical strain on individuals by distributing effort and increasing balance. In battle, that means fewer injuries and greater endurance. Basically, the phalanx is not just a military strategy, it's group physics in action. And don't miss this quirky detail. The sarissa was so long that soldiers in the back 2 or 3 rows couldn't even see the enemy. They just held out their spears and trusted the guy in front, kind of like a deadly version of crowd surfing. Except with more stabbing. Scientists still argue whether the Macedonian phalanx was truly revolutionary, or just a souped-up version of older formations. Some say it was inevitable. Others say it only worked because Philip trained his army into a single-minded machine. Either way, you're here, seeing the birth of something that would terrify opponents for decades. You hear trainers barking commands in sharp Macedonian. Soldiers adjust in perfect sync. And in that moment, you realize that this army isn't just built for defense. It's built for dominance. For pushing forward no matter the cost. And when you try to step close to the line, a trainer gently but firmly pulls you back. You stand there, he says, and you don't move. It's less a warning and more a rule of nature. As the drills finish, you walk among the soldiers. Young men with sunburnt faces and rough hands, proud of their discipline, loyal to their king. They joke with each other, share water from canteens, and talk about horses, rations, and dreams. But deep down, they know, they are part of something vast. Something that will change Greece forever. A few of them carry scars. One soldier tells you about losing 3 fingers during training, and still rejoining his unit. Another jokes that his helmet is so tight it makes him smarter by squeezing the dumb ideas out. You laugh along. But beneath the humor, there's steel. These men are serious. And then you see it, a map laid out on a table under a shade tarp. Lines. Arrows. Cities. The plan is forming. The phalanx isn't just a battle unit, it's the spearhead of empire. You get the feeling Philip isn't training these men to protect Macedonia. He's preparing to absorb Greece. Quietly. Completely. One of the captains pulls you aside and points toward the south. We're not done, he says. Philip's just getting started. And when he moves on the rest of them, they won't know what hit them. You sit there a while, staring at the organized rows of tents and supply wagons. Even the army camp is orderly, like a city in miniature. There's no wine flowing, no loud debates about poetry. Just purpose. And as the sun dips low and the wind brushes past your ear, you realize something else. This isn't just about Macedon. It's about the next version of Greece. The next step. The city-state model is cracking under its own weight. Internal squabbles. Exhaustion. Outdated tactics. And into that vacuum, a king with a plan. You picture Athens, Sparta, Thebes, all scrambling to adjust. But too slowly. The phalanx doesn't wait. The old Greece is still proud, still alive, but the future is marching. 16 rows deep. The sun creeps lazily up the horizon as you find yourself inside a surprisingly cozy wooden hall. Thick beams overhead, a long table, maps tacked on the walls, and the low hum of voices, all centered around one man, Philip II of Macedon. He doesn't look like a conqueror in this moment. More like an engineer, or maybe a coach. He's adjusting plans with a carpenter's precision, not a poet's flair. You listen to him outline a vision that sounds simple, but hits like thunder: unify the Greek world under Macedonian leadership, not by smashing everything like a bull in a pottery shop, but by applying pressure. Political pressure. Military pressure. Psychological pressure. He doesn't just want obedience. He wants inevitability. And if you're wondering what you're doing here, eavesdropping on one of history's most transformative figures, you're not alone. You lean on a wooden post, eyes wide, trying to stay out of the way as Philip drills into details with his officers. Names fly, Thessaly, Phocis, Thebes. You blink, because every name means something now. You've been there. The room smells of oil lamps and damp parchment. Outside, soldiers drill in the distance. The rhythm of the phalanx has become a heartbeat you can't unhear. Here's your mainstream science drop. Historical climatology research indicates a pattern of warming and prolonged drought in central Greece during this period. It may have nudged certain regions toward instability, especially agrarian economies, making Philip's unification offer even more attractive. A subtle sidekick to conquest, the weather. Now, this part's odd. Philip doesn't rush. He rarely screams, but every movement he makes sends ripples. One evening, you spot him watching a sparrow fly in the rafters above his campfire. He simply says, "It found its way in. There must be a way out." Was he talking about the bird, or Greece? You're not sure. Philip plays long games. Remember the sacred war, where Thebes and Phocis wrestled for dominance like two exhausted wrestlers in a pit of olive oil? Philip didn't jump in guns blazing. He positioned himself as a mediator, offering aid, then quietly sliding in military presence, like lending a friend a ladder and then quietly building a fort in their backyard. He gains Thessaly with almost surgical ease. Then Phocis. The cities, worn from years of internal strife and poor leadership, actually welcome his help. And once he's in, well, he never really leaves. Now comes the big one, Athens and Thebes. You can practically feel the tension in the air. These aren't little towns. These are ideas, entire ways of thinking. Athens, with its proud democracy, where citizens argue about taxes while sculptors carve gods. Thebes, warrior-rich and fiercely independent. Neither is thrilled about a Macedonian king calling the shots. So when Philip moves south, they join forces. A final gasp of old Greece, mustering its courage. You watch it unfold through camp reports and courier whispers. The Battle of Kyrenia is coming. You sense it like a low rumble. Let's sneak in a fringe-wide tidbit. Some accounts suggest that Alexander, Philip's son, still a teenager, led the cavalry charge that smashed the Theban sacred band, one of the most elite military units in the ancient world. Scholars still debate the details, but that twist? That's like letting your kid handle the nuclear launch codes, and then realizing he might be better at this than you. The night before Kyrenia, the Macedonian camp is calm. No shouting. No desperate speeches. Just sharpening, stretching, murmurs. You sit beside a young soldier who offers you dried figs and says, "Tomorrow, we change everything." He's not even scared. Just tired of waiting. Battle day. You're on a ridge, tucked behind a cluster of rocks with a spyglass. The field stretches wide. The Greek forces look fierce, especially the Thebans, standing in formation like they've got something to prove. And they do. But the Macedonian army? It's a machine. Every sarissa gleams. Every man in sync. You know how this ends. The phalanx drives forward. The Greek line bends, then buckles. Alexander's cavalry sweeps in like a hawk catching a snake mid-strike. The Theban sacred band doesn't retreat. They can't. They die where they stand. A monument will later be built over their graves, still there today. A stone lion watches the fields. Silent. Immovable. Scientists still argue whether this battle was the end of the classical Greek era or just a turning point. But standing there in the post-battle silence, with smoke curling in the air and the shouts dying down, it sure feels like an ending. Like the sun setting on the world you've known. Athens is spared, mostly. Philip doesn't want to raise it. He wants it quiet. And with that, he forms the League of Corinth, a unified federation of Greek states under his leadership. Well, unified, in the same way your boss says, team effort, when you do all the work. The map changes. Old rivalries fade, not because they're resolved, but because Philip now has the power to ignore them. You wonder if anyone saw this coming, years ago, when he was just tweaking training drills and building longer spears. That night, back at the Macedonian camp, the soldiers celebrate with cautious toasts and quiet songs. You're handed a goblet of wine by a man with a cracked helmet and dirt under his fingernails. He says, "Greece belongs to one man now." But that's not quite true, is it? Because in the corner of the firelight, you see a young man with sharp eyes and restless hands, a boy who watched his father win Greece, and is already dreaming of something bigger. He's petting his horse. He's sketching cities he's never seen. He's learning Persian. And you realize, this isn't over. You're still trailing shadows from Kyrenia when you find yourself watching a man stare at the horizon as though it's speaking directly to him. The man is Alexander. Not the great yet, just Alexander, the son of Philip. He's standing on a balcony in Pella, Macedonia's capital, his hands clasped behind him, his gaze locked eastward like the stars are whispering secrets. Behind him, the palace bustles with the echoes of conquest. Couriers, merchants, philosophers, ambassadors from subdued Greek states. But Alexander? He's somewhere else in his mind. Somewhere past the Aegean, past Anatolia, past the edge of what most men even dare to imagine. Then, Philip is assassinated. It happens in a flash, a dagger in the ribs, during a festival, by one of his own bodyguards. You weren't expecting it either. No grand climax. Just chaos. The scent of fresh olives and wine suddenly overrun by the metallic tang of blood and shouting. Historians still argue whether Alexander had a hand in it. Some say he was conveniently next in line. Others claim he was just a sharp boy caught in a sharper world. There's no trial. Just speculation and a lot of very quickly executed suspects. Fringe theory. Some ancient sources suggest Olympias, Alexander's firebrand mother, may have orchestrated it. She always said Alexander was destined for something far greater than Macedonia. Whatever the truth, Alexander ascends. And everything changes. He's 20. Young. Too young, they say. But no one dares say it loudly. Within weeks, he's crushed rebellions in Illyria and Thrace. Within months, he's razed Thebes to the ground after a revolt, sparing only the temples and the house of a poet. Thebes, once so proud, so stubborn, gone in a weekend. Like it never existed. This isn't Philip's Greece anymore. Now you're standing on a quay at the Hellespont, watching ships roll on the dark water. Alexander's army is preparing to cross into Asia Minor. Greece, unified and tense, stands behind him. Persia lies ahead, massive, sprawling, and glittering like a dragon's hoard. You might be wondering why he's even doing this. I mean, Greece just stopped bleeding. Why poke the biggest empire in the world? Here's your mainstream science moment. Recent archaeological digs in Sardis and western Anatolia suggest that trade routes between Greece and Persian territories were already well traveled. Economically, culturally, even philosophically, there were deep links. Alexander wasn't just storming into the unknown. He was entering a world his people had long whispered about, fantasized about, resented, and, secretly, admired. But Alexander isn't here for trade. He's here for legacy. Before he steps onto Persian soil, he makes a symbolic gesture. He visits Troy. Yes, that Troy. He lays a wreath at the tomb of Achilles. Some say he took a shield from the temple there, claiming it as his own. You can almost hear him whisper, "I'm not just conquering the world, I'm stepping into legend." You trail the army through Asia Minor. The march is strangely quiet at first. The Persian satraps, the local governors, don't seem too concerned. A cocky kid with a small army? Let him tire himself out. Until he wins his first major battle at the Granicus River. You're there, huddled under a wagon tarp as bronze clatters and horses scream. Alexander personally leads the charge across the river, against every advisor's plea. It's a wild, reckless move. One of those you'll either be famous or dead moments. He survives. Thrives, even. Fun fringe fact, during that battle, Alexander nearly dies when a Persian noble strikes him on the helmet and almost cleaves through his skull. A companion saves him at the last moment. The helmet is said to have cracked in two, like a split coconut, yet he kept fighting. There are stories he never fully recovered. Others say it just made him sharper. City after city falls. Sardis opens its gates. Ephesus. Miletus. You're scribbling place names faster than you can process. And Alexander doesn't just conquer. He rebrands. He restores temples. He funds local festivals. He frees Greek cities from Persian control, but makes sure they know who their new best friend is. The real test comes at Issus. That's where he finally meets Darius III, king of Persia, in battle. You're high on a hill overlooking the narrow plain. Rain drips from your hood. The terrain is tight, muddy, not ideal for Persian cavalry. The gods, it seems, are playing favorites. Alexander doesn't blink. He arranges his men with geometric grace. Sarissas glisten in the cold morning light. Darius brings a massive army, possibly 5 times Alexander's size. But it doesn't matter. Here's where your scientific fact gets spicy. Recent reconstructions of the battlefield suggest that Persian troop numbers were likely inflated in ancient texts. Some claim 600,000, but logistical studies show supporting even 100,000 men in that terrain would have been impossible. Still big. Just not crush a mountain big. The battle is short. Bloody. Beautiful in a horrible way. Alexander rides straight at Darius. Imagine that. The king of Macedonia, charging like a thunderbolt at the ruler of the most powerful empire on earth. Darius panics. Flees. Leaves behind his family, his treasury, his prestige. The moment Darius turns tail, everything changes. You're in Darius' royal tent after the battle. Silk drapes. Golden cups. Soft music. Persian royalty now in Alexander's custody, his enemies, now his guests. He treats them with strange dignity. Offers to marry one of Darius' daughters. Sends their mother kind letters. It's unsettling. Empathy cloaked in power. Alexander continues on, Phoenicia, Gaza, Egypt. Each conquest a new notch on destiny's belt. At one point, he's walking alone in the Egyptian desert and claims to have received a message from the oracle at Siwa, that he's the son of Zeus. Scientists still argue whether Alexander believed that, or just said it because he wanted others to. Maybe both. What's belief when you've never lost a battle? Back in camp, soldiers call him King of Asia. You hear the title murmured like a prayer. He doesn't deny it. He just asks what's next. And somehow, you already know. East. Always east. The Silk Road hums like a pulse. The stars look brighter out here. And Alexander? He's not done. Not even close. Now you're somewhere in the blistering heart of Persia, the terrain no longer Greek or even Anatolian, but foreign in its silence. The rivers here don't whisper, they murmur with secrets thousands of years old. The rocks glow red at dusk, and the sand tastes like iron if you lick your lips wrong. Alexander's army, once so lean and sharp, has grown bloated with followers. Cooks. Scribes. Diplomats. Even philosophers tagging along for the ride, hoping to scribble something meaningful while riding a camel. You can barely move through camp without bumping into someone with opinions on Plato. But the soldiers? They're getting tired. Not of victory, but of distance. It's one thing to conquer Asia Minor. It's another to keep marching deeper into a continent that seems to have no end. You hear grumbles. Not mutiny, yet, but enough to make the officers raise eyebrows in their wine. Alexander doesn't care. He's got one prize left. Babylon. The city of gods. The city of dreams. The city that sings through time itself. You arrive not in conquest, but in awe. Babylon opens its gates without a fight. The streets are lined with incense. The canals shimmer like veins under moonlight. The hanging gardens, if they really existed, might have already wilted, but the myths are alive in every alley. You can almost see Nebuchadnezzar's ghost leaning out a window, nodding in slow approval. Here's a mainstream science tidbit. Modern excavations of Babylon suggest it had one of the most advanced irrigation systems of the ancient world, complete with sluice gates, levees, and urban plumbing. Babylon wasn't just wealthy, it was sophisticated. And Alexander? He walks through it like it belongs to him. You pause in a quiet courtyard as a priest translates omens. Something about eclipses. Bad dreams. Birds flying backward. Alexander just smiles. I've seen worse, he says, and moves on. The real threat, though, isn't cosmic. It's Darius. Yes, him again. He's regrouped. Somehow, after Isis, you'd think he'd vanish, maybe write poetry in exile. But nope. He's scraping together every coin, soldier, and satrap he can find. A wounded lion, pacing. And that's how you find yourself in Gaugamela. Unlike Isis, this battlefield is wide open. Perfect for Persian chariots, cavalry, and sheer numbers. It's the final boss level, and it looks impossible. Even Alexander's seasoned officers look pale. The sun rises like an omen, blood orange and far too hot. Before the battle, Alexander prays. Not to Zeus. Not to Apollo. But to fear itself. And to glory. You get the sense he sees no difference. Then it begins. Chariots scream across the plain. The ground shakes. You can't hear yourself think over the pounding hooves and war cries. There's one awful moment where it looks like the Macedonian line will buckle. Persian cavalry flanks the right. But Alexander doesn't flinch. He rides into the chaos. A classic hammer and anvil. Feigned retreats. Pinched formations. Like an artist wielding geometry instead of paint, Alexander maneuvers until Darius is exposed. Again. And again, he flees. Historians still argue whether Darius' flight was cowardice or strategy. Some say he meant to regroup and strike later. Others say he simply lost his nerve. Either way, this time, he doesn't get a third chance. He's hunted down. By one of his own satraps. You stumble across the body in the desert. Flies already gathering. It's undignified. This was the king of kings. Now, he's just a ruin in the sand. Alexander, upon finding him, weeps. Then buries him with honors. Perhaps to claim moral superiority. Perhaps out of genuine sadness. You can't tell anymore. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit. There's a strange claim, mostly ignored by mainstream scholars, that Alexander spoke over the body and said, "You were a bridge, not a rival." Make of that what you will. With Darius gone, Persia falls. Just falls. Persepolis, the ceremonial heart, is the next stop. You arrive by torchlight. The palace glows gold, like the gods have poured honey across the columns. Riches beyond belief. Art, tapestries, scrolls, perfumed fountains. And fire. Oh yes, fire. Alexander burns it. Whether it's a drunken dare, an accident, or a calculated statement, the palace of Xerxes, the same Xerxes from Thermopylae, is set ablaze. Some say an Athenian courtesan goaded him into it. Others claim it was retribution for the burning of Athens a century earlier. Either way, the fire consumes the halls where emperors once whispered across generations. Scientists still debate the real reason for Persepolis' destruction. Was it symbolic? Drunken madness? Or simply poor planning with too many oil lamps and not enough supervision? Doesn't matter now. Ash drifts over your cloak like snow. And then, something shifts. Alexander starts dressing more Persian. He adopts court rituals, proskynesis, where subjects bow or prostrate themselves. Greeks don't like it. Macedonians like it even less. We're not bowing to a man, they mutter. That's for gods. You hear rumors. Assassination plots. Poisoned wine. Late-night arguments between generals. The loyalty once so absolute is fraying. And Alexander? He keeps pushing east. Past Persia. Past where the maps go. Into the unknown. Where the stars pulse a little slower, and every step is further from home. You begin to wonder if he even remembers what home is. The day's battles and city walls fade now, settling softly into the quiet folds of night. You breathe deeply, the air cool and calm around you, carrying the distant whispers of ancient olive trees and the gentle lap of timeless waves. The echoes of warriors and poets alike grow faint, replaced by the soothing hush of history's endless flow. Imagine yourself resting beneath a wide, starlit sky, where every glimmer is a story told and a lesson learned. No matter the chaos of yesterday, tonight holds only peace, soft, steady, and deep. Let your thoughts drift like a slow river, winding gently through memory and time, carrying you safely into dreams untouched by war or worry. Feel your body relax, your mind quiet, as you drift deeper, embraced by the calm that follows every storm. Let the ancient world's soft breath lull you further, its stories a gentle rhythm to ease your journey into rest. Sleep well, knowing the past is always with you, a silent guide through the night's quiet dark. End of script. Sweet dreams.